We're on to our next speaker. Hopefully people can still hear me. Our next speaker is Dr. Neil Cooke. And Neil is a reader and associate head of School of Nursing at Ulster University. He's had key responsibilities around employability, education and equality and diversity and inclusion, and remains globally active in neuroscience nursing, being president of the European Association of Neuroscience Nurses. Neil's going to be discussing student representation, technical and professional staff, and bringing about cultural change while coming in as a new chair to the existing process. So Neil, I'm delighted to welcome you to the webinar. Look forward to hearing your presentation. And I think you've got the sense of how this works now, and that I'm asking people to post their questions as you speak, and I'll hopefully put a few of them to you then at the end. So thank you, Neil.
Good morning. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay and might see my slides. Thank you very much for the invitation to present at your conference today. As you heard, my name is Neil. I'm the Associate Head of School for Nursing at Ulster. So we are a large school, around 90 staff. The university has 4 campuses. So for our School of Nursing, we have primarily our undergraduate students, pre-registration students at the Magee campus in Derry. And then we have our post-registration, postgraduate provision, largely at the Jordanstown and soon to be Belfast campuses. So our staff are spread out really across quite a distance, with 75 miles between campuses, which brings its own set of unique challenges to any school and to bring the school together around certain issues. So I'm going to talk about the journey today that our school has been going through with Athena Swan. So we were successful with our first Athena Swan Award in November 2015, and that was a bronze award. Now I have to highlight that we didn't apply for a bronze award. We very ambitiously applied for a silver award, and actually that was quite a good process in terms of learning from that, and I'll highlight some of the tips from that as we go through. So we then applied for our silver award in November 2018, which we were awarded then in April 2019, and that really saw us through quite a number of changes across the school, and I'll highlight some of the key areas that we were successful in. I became the chair of our self-assessment team for Athena Swan in August 2017, and I suppose I decided with our assessment team to maybe take a different approach about how we were really, I suppose, integrating Athena Swan into the culture of the school, and to try and embed the charter more, I suppose, as a lived charter, and to align that with some things that we were doing in the school. So one of the key things we were doing in the school was implementing a school culture change project around person-centeredness, which is something that is a large piece of work that's, I suppose, emanated from our Institute of Nursing and Health Research globally around person-centered practice and person-centered care. But we also wanted to say, well, actually, we need to have a culture for that within our school as well. And that tied in very well with the Athena Swan work that we were doing. So to really kind of give an illustration of what we did, we had a parent self-assessment team, but we felt that we needed to integrate more across the school and embed the charter, as I've said. So we made sure that the school board had a slot for Athena Swan for every school board throughout the year. We set up some kind of subgroups from the parent self-assessment team so that they would take suppose some ownership and innovation in how to deliver on aspects. We undertook then a staff survey to really kind of gauge where we were at, particularly as we progressed from our previous application. And we also integrated with other schools, committees and teams to learn from others and to also share with others. And really through that whole process, we developed up our Athena Swan drafts, which we fed back to all of those other elements, and then had very good support from the University Athena Swan Champions team and the EDI unit. In developing our draft application, then we had a number of school reviews, but we had faculty reviews internally as well, and at the university committee, as well as getting that critical review from an external partner, which was really, really valuable to us in terms of learning about the whole process. And all of that really led us to our final Athena Award application, which we were successful for silver. So some of the key kind of successful things that we achieved, and I'll talk through how we achieved some of these. One of the things that we did was we increased our male undergraduate nursing applications from 8.52% to 10.2% in 3 years. Now that doesn't seem like much. Our school has around 1,100 undergraduate students, so it is, in terms of numbers, quite a success for us. But we knew we were also up against a lot of stereotypes around nursing. The profession itself has around 11% men in it, so we knew that this has been quite a long issue in nursing, and so to get that bit of progress in it, we were very pleased. But it's work that we're not finished with. And we also established a school professoriate, and that actually became really important in terms of developing our staff. And the school professoriate undertook the developmental appraisal system that we have. They implemented with staff, and we saw an increase in engagement in developmental assessment review from 54% to 88%. So we got quite an increase in uptake of that. And in those developmental appraisals, it's all around plans for progression over the next 3 to 5 years, including looking at how you can meet markers for promotion. We continue to invest in staff development, and 90% of our staff now hold a teaching qualification, which was the highest for any school within Ulster, and we've still increased on that since. And we really tried to increase the awareness to and access to work-life policies within the university, because there are a number of schemes already set up, around part-time working, flexible hours, different opportunities that exist, and policies that are there to support that. And unless people are aware of those and accessing those, they don't tend to take those. And so we improved that awareness and access from 46% to 78%. Our culture project was a major piece of work over a number of years, and it increased the sense of support and equity within the school in terms of the responses in our survey. And one of the key things that came from that was a collaborative development of a school strategic plan, so that everybody was involved at different grades, at different sectors across the school. So not just the academic team, but our technical professional services staff as well. And then we also had a lot of improvement in progressive inclusiveness. So things like involving our professional services staff in our school leadership team, and also integrating our technical staff into our self-assessment team as well as our professional services, so that we were taking a whole team approach rather than something that was happening remotely, or the operation of the school that really only dealt with some sectors of the staff and complement. And that has been a very positive experience. So in terms of gender representation, there was a number of things that we took actions around. We really focused on increasing the male profile and marketing material. As I've said earlier on, there's a lot of stereotypes around nursing, and so we needed to start to combat that in our outward and inward appearance as well. We started to target some males aged 15 years and older through school outreach activities to try and change the perceptions of nursing. So one of the things we did more recently was we brought in a large cohort from some of the schools around that age of 15, asked them about their perceptions around nursing and men in nursing, and they were all male students. None of them were interested in nursing, wouldn't even contemplate it. Then we brought them through a series of stations within the school to meet students, let them understand what nurses do, etc. And when we brought them back later that day to ask them who would think about nursing and challenge their views of what they understood nursing was, we had quite a remarkable change in a number of those students. We also held a number of men in nursing events, which we could see were very key in translating applications into acceptances after those events. And that's in a course that's quite competitive for access. We also made sure that we had gender balance on interview panels, including our interviews for students coming into our pre-registration programs as well. Now, we still feel we have work to do here, and it still remains a focus on our current action plan. We also found that we had some issues around progressing people from undergraduate to postgraduate programs of study. So we changed the routes of direct entry from undergraduate study that enabled earlier career progression routes to be taken up by students. And that has been quite successful, with some of our undergraduate students moving more quickly to PhDs in particular. And it did help us to address some of the gender balances there by opening up that opportunity. In terms of academic performance, we also developed a PhD peer forum group, was established and run by the PhD students. And the sharing of knowledge and information and skills through that forum has really helped to, I suppose, retain that student group, supported across genders and stages, and it's something that's been very highly evaluated by the PhD students and seems to have helped in terms of successful performance as well. We also engaged with the employability journey, which is a learning gain project that helps our students, particularly our undergraduate students, to focus on their employment year on year, and then to be able to target particular groups if there are issues. And we saw a huge change in readiness for employment through that process, and it was also a project university-wide that was award-winning. So there's some of the aspects that we did around gender representation. In terms of our technical and professional services staff, this was certainly an area of deficit. So one of the areas that we focused on was that academic development of some of those staff. So for example, for our technical staff, we integrated some into the teaching teams around life support and moving and handling education, and development to be valued members of those teams, and actually utilize skills that some of them already had and brought to that role. We also enabled a number of staff to access a university scheme called Enhance, which is a professional development scheme with the Higher Education Academy. And we have a number of people still now starting out on associate fellowship routes through that in our technical and our professional services staff, to help recognise the skills that they have and to gain that recognised professional qualification. We also had a restructure university-wide, but it helped us shape it in the school to make sure that there was a broader grading structure within both the technical and the professional services staff, so that there was actually a career promotion opportunity available to those staff through a structure that did not really exist before. We also created acting up opportunities for higher grades, so that staff then would get the requisite experience that they might need to be able to apply for those higher grades in the future, whether that's within the school or throughout the university or further afield. We recognised we needed to develop those staff, and if that takes them somewhere else and advances their career, that's okay if we're supporting progression. And we also started to really get recognition of what our employees did through the Distinguished Employee Awards that the university hosts and supports. In terms of culture, we recognise, as I said earlier on, there was a need for culture change in the school. And if you don't set about a culture that's really around person-centeredness and valuing staff, you're not really going to develop staff, keep staff, and make staff feel valued. So one of the things that myself and Professor McIlpatrick, the head of school, undertook was to really eradicate the short contracts from the school. And we did that within a number of months. And we have no staff now on less than actually 3-year contracts, but we moved everybody from those short contracts, and then we supported them in transition to permanent contracts, and everybody that was on those short-term contracts is now in a permanent position. We created joint appointments through clinical academic career creation. So we appointed a reader who is 25% within the university and 75% within practice. And that was an opportunity to create career pathways to academia that are outside of those traditional routes, particularly for nursing, where you have to really establish yourself as a specialist and expert in practice before you can start to build an academic career, which then really delays, I suppose, a lot of that route through promotion, because they're later coming into academia. And we developed staff teams and activities, and one of the things that you see on the right was a collage that we did at one of our away days to help staff, I suppose, illustrate to each other some of the unique things that they bring to the team, and how when you bring all those things together, we have a very rich, diverse team that supports each other. So we were very much trying to improve that working culture. And we also did a number of interventions around leadership programs. I've mentioned the developmental appraisal review. We rolled out a teachers researcher program where we have people who would not traditionally consider themselves as candidates for PhDs, people who have primarily focused on teaching as their main component of their work and not really research active. And so that helped to progress a number of people through that program onto masters and PhD routes, where they used elements of their practice as part of their PhD or MSc studies to progress staff. And we also, for our research, I suppose, capacity, we decided we needed to have capacity funds that also created opportunities for those who weren't very research active to progress in research active careers. And so we set out small pots of money to help support people to move into some research activities, and then those activities tended to grow from there. We also realized we needed bespoke promotion workshops, that the university workshops didn't really help because not always was it recognized that nursing was a 3-semester program, and that made it difficult in nursing for people to maybe find those opportunities to hit all those key promotion criteria. So we thought we needed to hold promotion workshops that were bespoke to show people how they could meet the criteria for promotion. We funded a number of coaching opportunities. We developed a maternity checklist to support those preparing to go on maternity leave, preparing to return from maternity leave, and the introduction of keep in touch days, which were extremely valuable to those women who access those through maternity. And then we also promoted that we needed greater representation on committees across the university from our school, and so we were very active in doing that through our own faculty and getting the executive dean's support for that. So some other things that we did around staffing cultures, we thought, well, actually, how are we representing ourselves externally when we try to appoint staff? So we now make sure that all our personal specifications are screened for gender bias. We make sure that unconscious bias and elements of our mandatory training for interview and selection includes all of those aspects around EDI. We develop role models and stories to promote job roles, and we make sure that our panels are gender balanced as well. But one of the other things that we have had some, I suppose, anecdotal feedback on was the positive action statements in our job advertisements, so that we encourage the underrepresented applicants to apply for those posts. And we created male and female points of contact then for prospective applicants to make I suppose it easier for people to contact people and get perspectives about working for us, and that seems to be taken up quite well, to have those 2 different points of contacts for each post. And we also relooked at our promotional materials to make sure, are they really representing a gender balance? They weren't, and so we set about to change all of those as well to increase that gender balance. So in terms of our future focus, we've got a number of foci. We're still looking at career progression. We traditionally see a poor number of applications from lecturer to senior lecturer. So we are putting on bespoke workshops for our staff to try and really encourage them. There is a new promotions pathway in the university, and so we're developing career pathways from people from the outset when they start to get employed with us, and we're putting on bespoke workshops to support that. We're continuing the Teachers Researcher project, considering its success and how positive staff have been about having that route to develop themselves. We are expanding our induction packs because we found that a number of our induction processes before really were not optimal in terms of people identifying really what they needed to do in their role from the outset and setting out a way of working that also supports their future development and promotions. We're reviewing that staff appraisal system. It has been very successful, but the university are now trialing a new system, and we're going to see how that works alongside our existing process. And the school are now developing their own workload model. So it's not something that's coming from the school leadership team. It has been structured right across all the strata of staff and all the types of staff across the school to develop a more representational workload model that looks at all aspects of the different roles within the school. In terms of gender equality, we are doing a 3-university project with Queen's University and the Open University in Northern Ireland to try and change perceptions around nursing as a career, so that it's seen as a career for all genders, for people at different stages in life and from different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so that work is really taken hold, and we hope to be able to have that live in the next number of months. We've been successful in gaining seed funding for gender equality in nursing events, and also we are focusing quite a bit on career planning, both for our students at undergraduate and postgraduate level, but also within the school staff as well, and tracking those applications for promotions and targeting areas where we see a lack of gender balance. We are still having to do some work around postgraduate progression and attainment, and also I suppose with undergraduate as well. And we've set up a peer review panel for publications and for grant applications, and one of our goals is to review the effectiveness of those panels as well to help support staff development, particularly around research. So as probably I think my last slide, but just really I suppose to focus on lessons learned. For me, one of the key things was about team ownership within the school. So there was a sense from the school that the Athena Swan felt a little bit remote, and the process that I outlined at the beginning of the presentation was really quite important, that there was ownership. That made it quite a challenge really to coordinate, but actually we saw much more successful engagement and realization of our previous action plan as a result of that. Another key lesson for us was that there's a really strong need for sufficient support around data provision, the organization of that data and the analysis of that data and consistency of that data, so that if you're tracking over a number of years, you need to get the same data each year to be able to track that successfully. And so organizational support around that and support within the school itself is really key, so that you can manage that data and then actually take something meaningful from it. I think one of the main lessons that we learned, particularly from our Bronze Award and our first application, is not to avoid the negatives. So one of the feedbacks that we had when we really were thinking that we could have a Silver Award on our first application was that actually we skirted around some issues, and we didn't just say it as it is and deal with it. And I think one of the things that is necessary in any application is to really say it as it is and actually develop a really sincere, authentic action plan around that, and that will really support your application going forward. And then you'll be able to show how you've been able to deliver on that. And you can be realistic. There are things that happen that will obviously make those action plans maybe not as good as you thought they were when you wrote it and you had to amend it. And that's all, I think, seen quite positively in the review of your application. And the last two things I would say is really highlight the impact that you're making, particularly if you're going for silver and gold. Really make it very clear to anybody who's looking at your application that you have made an impact. So one of the things that I did was I put a red box around everything and summarized this was the impact and made it very clear in each section, this is what we have done and this is what we have achieved. And I think that was one of the key successes for our silver application. And then continue to track your action plan hand in hand with that data to make sure that you're keeping that momentum up, keeping the ownership up within the school, and keeping the Athena Swan Charter live, so that it's something that's lived out rather than something that has to be renewed every couple of years. And really that's all my slides, and just thank you very much, and very happy to answer any questions.
Neil, thanks very much for that. We'll take maybe one or two questions. We're tight enough on time, just to say that, but I really appreciate everything you went through there. And one thing that struck me about it, I particularly was interested in the whole cultural side. And there is a question here that I think would resonate with a lot of people. It's about, I suppose, some of the initiatives, like the contracts, you know, moving from temporary to permanent. I suppose the perception in a lot of organizations would be that that would be outside of the control of the department, and it's at a central or university level that those decisions are taken. So just how did you make that happen? How did you actually shift the culture from temporary contract to more mainstream permanent contracts?
So if we have a post to fill or to renew within the school, we have to put forward, I suppose, a set of paperwork that goes through our People and Culture department, which is our HR department, where you have to really make the case for the post for it to be approved. And I think, I suppose, one of the things we did is we upped our game. So what we did was we tracked the KPIs the university were working towards, and we were able to put into our business case for those posts how the KPIs would be at risk should we not be able to fill this post and fill it for a particular duration. We also, I suppose, got greater understanding at the People and Culture department that you're not going to attract people into careers in education from practice, particularly now for nursing, as the career pathways have really advanced. You know, people can go into an advanced nurse practitioner role and get paid more than you will as a lecturer in the university. So the incentives are always going to be around, well, if you want to get staff in and have a stable workforce, you're going to have to offer something that's better than temporary contracts. And so we did get buy-in based on around those KPI arguments and also around, I suppose, the workforce changes and the strategy of retention of staff, and being able to present, you know, some of those patterns and some of the evidence from our staff survey alongside that in that paperwork we put forward for post approval. And that changed it. When we turned that around in around 2 months, we got those changed and moved.
Okay, that's really impressive. Just maybe I've just got time for one other question, and Neil, there are other questions. I'm not sure. Again, I've said the same thing to Caroline. If you do have time afterwards, if you're staying with us, it'd be great if you could have a quick look at those. But if not to worry as well. But just one final question from me, and just around the workload model. And I suppose again, it's an issue that a lot of universities and institutes of technology might have. You know, that there is a workload model, but how well does it work within the school itself? How owned is it by the school? So, you know, or the department. So it's just, I suppose, in your experience, how have you translated the workload model into a kind of a living document, and so that people can actually experience it within your department?
So we've gone through various iterations within the school. So the school does have the ability to hold their own model currently. And the university are looking at trying to support workload model developments across the university. We currently feel that our workload model doesn't fully represent everything that somebody does, and therefore doesn't value everything that's part of the role. So it very much works around a teaching allocation rather than looking at, well, what are the research aspects and what's the civic contribution aspects, which are kind of the three main areas that we look at. So what we've done is we have set up really a task and finishing group to develop our workload model, and we've got representation from all grades, all types of contracts across the school on that. It's in its first iteration now of review. It'll go out to the whole school to review it. But basically what they've done is they've really tried to flesh out all the different roles, look at the percentages of time that I know are kind of spent on those, and at the different levels, and how people would, I suppose, also move up those different levels. So it's something that's been owned, and we've been very keen not to put, for example, the head of school on task and finishing group, and that it's something that the school will develop itself. Now, we have had a very good example of how that can be done in our School of Geography and Environmental Sciences, where they did do this themselves and came up with a very successful workload model. So we've looked at how they've done that, and we've used that process of facilitation to try and see what we can learn from them to inform that process. So we're not just ignoring all the good practice that's around us that has been successful. But it's going to be a journey, and I don't think we're going to get it right on the first go. But I think the fact that the staff have ownership of it, and the staff will review it and then tweak it as it goes along, I think it's much more representative of what it needs to be.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil.